Hey again, it's Douglas Scott McCarron. Again, I'm doing these videos because I used to be a very dark, mean, vindictive person, and now I'm calm and peaceful, and I want to share that with people. Um, if you're supporting these videos, if I'm setting up a Patreon account, mostly because I spent a lot of money buying this equipment to videotape all this. Um, I now know maybe I could have spent it on a phone, but anyway, if you want to support it and help me pay for the equipment, I'd appreciate it. So, I want to talk today about. I've mentioned that I used to be mean, dark, vindictive, and then I became calm and peaceful. I want to talk about the day it happened. Um, and I'm only sharing this with you because just to kind of give you a flavor of what happened. Don't, I caution you taking this is what happened to you, or it didn't happen, and then you discount it. I'm just giving you an idea of how it happened for me, and to let you know that, once again, it is possible to let go of all of your past stuff that's bothered you. I used to try and cover it up and hide from it and act like I didn't feel it. I actually tried to be emotionally dead. That's what a lot of people do. They try and act like they don't have any feelings, and then they walk around proving that nobody rules them, and yet they're completely ruled by it. There's no real freedom in it. It's just trying to avoid a pain that you feel anyway because it's there. That's the whole reason why you're trying to feel emotionally dead. And I also want to say that, what I'm about to describe happened after 35 years of therapy and landmark forum and miracle of love and Catholic mysticism and meditation and a lot of thought. So hopefully it doesn't take 35 years for you. Maybe I was just slow. But at the same time, I do want to let you know it's absolutely possible. You really can let go of all those inner demons and pains and become calm and peaceful. All right, so anyway, um, I talked inside of myself. This is what's going on. Kind of set it up. All of my life, I'd thought about myself. I'd come to these understandings about why I was upset. And I'll give you a little bit. There's things like my mom used to sit there and denigrate me and tell me she never wanted me. Whether that was true all the time or not, I don't know. Actually, I can only think of 4 times she told me that. But I turned that into it was universally always true because, it upset me as a child. Um, I would interact with girls and women, and they would get upset and push me away, and that would prove that they didn't love me and I was unworthy, which kind of ignores they might feel unworthy and they don't feel loved and they don't know how to accept it. And, there's just all this stuff going on. But I had built up this big long story over my life that I was unworthy, unloved, unlovable. It didn't matter what I wanted, on and on. I understood how all that worked. I understood where it all came from, all the stuff, things my dad said, my mom said, how I interacted with them. But knowing that, it really didn't change anything. Talking to the therapist did help because she was the one that clued me into. I had this defense system that was made up that protected me, but also kept me from who I actually am. But I knew that 15 years ago. I was well aware of it, but I was still very much under. It was like I took being aware of it in my thoughts and understanding it as the same as actually changing it. But I was still really the same. I just didn't respond to a lot of the anger and upset anymore, but it was still in there, and I didn't think it could come out. There's this whole it doesn't go away, and I honestly, you could sit here and get me angry and pissed off now. You could come up and start insulting me and kicking me and slapping me and hitting me, and yeah, I'll get upset and start punching back. It's the way human beings are. But I don't have that general day to day, all the time internal just, God, I just fucking going on anymore, which is what I had. And I don't know that how many people actually have that. I mean, I'm mostly aiming this at people who do have that internal growl and anger and pissed offness going on. But anyway, so I'd had all this understanding, and I'd come to the realization I used to think life was pointless, especially with my mom's side. You just do a bunch of stuff, you learn a bunch of stuff. All the stuff you learn and explanations, it gives you this nice big understanding of the thing, but it kind of becomes really just that cocoon of protecting you in your how you view things, and then you die. And what was the point? So that kind of sat there in me the whole time. People go around trying to rule their neighborhoods with guns and make people scared of them and, respect them. Of course, they're not respected, they're just feared. But all that does is just pound you back into the clutches of that internal cocoon that's binding you and enslaving you. So, knowing all this didn't really free me from anything. So what happened was, again, this is just me. What was the source of all that upset? What was the upset of all that grinding away? And I'd been hearing over and over from these various things, they say a lot of the way you view the world is set up when you're like 3 or 4 years old. And that just kind of runs everything. And it kind of made sense in my understanding and what is the word I'm trying to use? Experience of life. It was like by the time I got into school, I already was convinced it didn't matter what I wanted and I sucked and everything. And I imagine, my parents and their struggles trying to get awake and get a roof over their head and get food on the table and trying to figure out how to raise these kids that they'd had no training in how to raise. They had frustrations and they showed it and they got upset. But knowing that didn't help me either. I was still upset and angry and growling inside. So one day I was I was assisting at this workshop. It's a landmark forum I was at. And they were going through this particular exercise. And it was suddenly like, I had this memory when I was like 3 years old. And this may sound kind of funny, but it's kind of the whole thing. I'd run around and being a 3-year-old, I would tear up the house and I was pooping and peeing everywhere and on, and my parents were trying to get me to stop. Because, there's this monster destroying their house. They're trying to raise a family and have a nice house and, buy stuff. And here I am running around. I mean, I remember I used to this may be too much information, but I would poop in a bag and throw it behind the refrigerator. And that was why. At the time of 3, I thought that was funny. But anyway, so I have this memory, and my parents were trying to suppress me. And I took that suppressing to mean they weren't going to let me do what I want. They were trying to suppress all my fun. They were like, didn't care what I want. And there I was. You don't care what I want. You won't let me do what I want to do. You don't love me. And all of my life I'd felt rejected by my parents and unloved and unwanted. But I realized as I was saying that it wasn't that they rejected me. I rejected them. I literally stopped talking. They would send me to a therapist, and the therapist was trying to help me, and I was very suspicious of why he was poking around in my thoughts, especially once I realized he was telling my parents what they were doing. And I sure didn't want my parents to know what was going on, because then they'd just suppress me. Now, my dad and my mom were both very controlling. The thing is, they also grew up having this stuff happen. My dad, when he was a kid, he would be the one who would get smacked and spanked and hit if anything went wrong. He had two sisters. They would purposely do things wrong, so he would get hit and beat up for it. So my dad had, he was very controlled and calculated, but, he also had this, he would sit there at the table and just like this, and think about the condition of the world. And this whole thing I'm doing with my hand where he comes off and does that, I can remember him doing it. It's like it's imprinted in me. So he had his own traumatization that happened when he was a kid. But what I got was, there were two things that happened. One was I got that I set up my whole understanding of the world. I rejected my parents at 3. Now, this is the rejection and decision of a pissed off 3-year-old. But it all happened, before I had language. So by the time I got to language and some sort of self-awareness, I already had in my head, screw you, fuck you, go away, leave me alone, you don't love me. That was just my central feeling. I was totally under the control, really, of a 3-year-old. And as I saw that, I just kind of went, wow, I'm just a pissed off 3-year-old. And I also got that my parents, some parents sink their kids out into the woods and leave them there. My parents didn't do that. They kept working with me, they fed me, they kept trying to raise me. So it wasn't that I was unloved. I'd been loved the whole time. It's just I didn't get it the way I wanted it, so I rejected it. I caused all that. Again, I as a pissed off 3-year-old. But I was the source of all that. You can imagine after 60 years of nobody loves me, screw you, push these people away, blah, 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 to suddenly realize I was the source of it all. Well, that was kind of a shock. But the thing is, as I got that, and as I saw what my parents were doing, and they had also gone through the same thing, I forgave them, but I also forgave me. And quite literally, like that, it stopped. All of the hatred, all the vilification, all the pain and agony, all the moroseness, the sullenness, the waiting to get put down and attacking people before they even knew who I was, just stopped. And suddenly this very kind, caring, warm, supportive guy was sitting there in that chair. He was that cute little kid who wanted to be loved way back there, but now very mature. And also at choice. When I was a little child, I wasn't at choice. I was just a reacting machine. Pissed off I didn't get my way, and that's how I defined the world. And it wasn't that, I tried suppressing everything, but I was still, this was like it all just went quiet. And it's interesting because I had another workshop, and I just want to warn you. Some people seem to get upset when I say this story, but so I go through the first session. There's a breakup after a couple hours, and I go walking up to the leader, and I go, "Hi, I'm Douglas McCarron," and he puts his hand out and shakes my hand. He says, "Hi, you're arrogant and stingy," and I'm like, "What the fuck?" And he start walking away and says, "What are you just gonna walk away and not deal with it?" And I'm like, flipping him off and walked off. And but I didn't leave the workshop because I paid money for it. That's the way I thought. And so we come back and I sit down to the next session. And it goes all the way through it, and I'm like, I can't believe he called me arrogant and I couldn't remember the second word. So the next break, I walk up to him and I said, "Hi, I can't remember." And he says, "Arrogant and stingy." And walk away again. And I'm like, I can't believe he did. I can't believe he called me arrogant and what was that second word? The only thing I knew is it had the letter L in it. Show me the letter L in the word stingy. So I'm like, well, he's saying something to me and I'm not remembering what it is he's saying. And I'm obviously getting upset. So I should probably go up there and ask him again. Now, I grabbed a pad of paper and pen. In the workshop, you weren't supposed to have papers and pens, but this needed to be recorded so I'd remember it. So I go walking back up there. I had paper and pen, and I said, "What?" He says, "Arrogant and stingy." And I wrote down arrogant and stingy. Walked back, put the paper and pen back down, hold on a piece of paper, and I put it in my pocket. I'm like, how can you call me arrogant and stingy? I'm warm and loving. I love all of my friends. But, interesting thing is that was all not true. I didn't love all my friends. I was operating out of expecting to be rejected and diminished and despaired and pushing people away, withholding from them. And I was pretty convinced I understood the whole world. You may have heard some of my discussions about forgiveness and the word extraordinary, and, I know how to play classical guitar and on and on. So I'm not exactly dumb. And I have an intellectual arrogance to me. It's quite true. I assume I can do anything, and I know things other people don't. But the stingy thing, it just wouldn't stick. And I sat there and I looked at that and I realized, again, this inner cocoon, this way of understanding the world, this way I would speak of the world and it would hold on to me. Stingy did not fit. It would not, the way I heard the world would not allow me to hear the word stingy. It just ejected it. It claimed there was a letter L in it. This is how powerful it can be. And I sat there and I was like, man, what the heck is this? What the heck? It's like my inner dialogue just throws out what it doesn't want to hear. So there I was, arrogant and stingy. And 30 years later, I realized that my parents loved me and I rejected them and I withheld everything from them. Arrogant and stingy. At 3. And had been there my entire life. And there was something about just accepting it. Again, it all just stopped. Literally, in a couple of seconds. Now, again, 30, 40 years of therapy, working on workshops, I'm getting ready. But quite literally, if you do the inner work, if you get open to the possibility, you can be healed and resolve everything. Quite literally. Your whole internal fighting will stop. It's quite possible. I know, because it happened to me. And I was one of the most pissed off, angry people I knew in the whole world. So, try. Get out of your own inner thoughts. Again, if you stay in your inner thoughts and ruminate and chew on this all over and over, you're on its turf, and it's always going to come back to the same conclusions. There won't be any change. That's what you really actually pay for when you go to a therapist or you go to a workshop. You're paying for the opportunity to be outside of yourself, out there with others. And, you know, you can also go to 12-step things like that, things that don't cost a lot of money. It's just a question of what happens. Me, I went to a therapist a couple of years. Actually, I went to a therapist 30 years earlier in college. He didn't do it the way I wanted to, so I rejected him and left. Sound like a 3-year-old I know? That's the hardest thing for me to realize, that all my manliness and powerful and on, my stand in the world and I have my authority in the world was really just this 3-year-old trying to control things and claiming it was in charge. Even my theological understanding of things came down to it. So, knowing this didn't change anything. I had to take the action of being aware of it and declaring it and understanding it to be true, and then forgiving it and letting go of it. Okay, I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much. Bye.